Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilman rabbal alameen. Allahumma inna ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. Amma ba'd. We've reached a stage in the book that we can call it, this is the cure, right? It's not that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah azza wa jal was not providing the cure as he was talking about all of these diseases and illnesses. He was. But this is officially where he's going to be talking about the cure itself, right? So he mentions this. And he begins it with few questions. He says, فَإِنْ قِيلَ, he says, now we want to ask, is there a medicine for this chronic illness? Especially what he was talking about. We said the sexual sins or sins based on sex and love. These types of sins. So he's saying, is there a cure for this chronic illness? Is there a ruqya, something that can help for this fatal magic, bewitching? How could you push away that feebleness or that foolishness? How do you find a short way to success? And how can the intoxicated be awakened from the liquor of desire or the liquor of love and intoxication? How could he survive it? How can he overcome it? وَهَلْ يَمْلِكُ الْعَاشِقُ قَلْبَهُ? He says, and can the ashiq, the one who is afflicted with this obsessive love, extreme love, right? Does he own his heart, especially that this ishq, that type of love, extreme love, has reached the innermost of his heart? قَالَ وَإِنْ لَامَهُ لَائِمٌ. And he says, if someone blames him, he finds joy in that blame because it reminds him of his beloved. And if someone scolds him, it actually emboldens him. Meaning, whether someone blames him or scolds him, reminds him, it doesn't work with him. So he's saying, okay, what is the solution? And he says, يُنَادِي عَلَيْهِ شَاهِدُ حَالِهِ بِلِسَانِ مَقَالِهِ. He says his actions reflect the following verses of poetry. Or sometimes actually his words would say these things. His tongue would say these things. And these are verses of a poet who is talking about a woman. And poets in general tend to exaggerate, right? They tend to exaggerate. So we don't know if that poet actually felt this way towards her. But Ibn al-Qayyim is saying, it doesn't mind whether the poet himself felt it or not. There are actually people who feel this and they reflect it in how they live. So he said, وَقَفَ الْهَوَى بِي حَيْثُ أَنْتَ فَلَيْسَ لِي مُتَأَخَّرٌ عَنْهُ وَلَا مُتَقَدَّمُ. He says, hawa, desire, or your love, let's call it. Your love had stopped me wherever you are. So I cannot take a step forward nor backward, meaning I am your captive. Can't love anybody anymore. I mean, I've loved you and I've stopped here. قال وأهنتني فأهنت نفسي جاهدا ما من يهون عليك ممن يكرم. He says, and you belittled me, you put me down, so I also want to put myself down. And how could anyone that you belittle be honorable? I mean, this is complete submission. So he says, you put me down, so I also want to put myself down to please you. Because how could anyone that you hate or that you want to put down be noble or be worthy of respect? And he said, subhanAllah, remarkably, he says, and you resemble my enemies, so I started to love them because what I get from them is what I get from you, right? So sort of he loves her, but she rebuffs him, she insults him, let's say. So he says, in a sense, you are like my enemies right now who insult me. And because of that, when they insult me, it reminds me of you, right? So I'm now started to love my enemies and their insults because they remind me of you, and your insults, at least they remind me of you. أجد الملامة في هواك لذيذة حُبًّا لِذِكْرِكِ فَلْيَلُمْنِ اللُّوَّمُ. He says, I find criticism pleasant when they criticize me about you because it brings up your name. Right? So let them blame me more and more, right? Usually you don't like a person to criticize you and blame you, but they'll say, don't love her so much. So because they mention her, he says, that brings joy to my heart. So let them talk and let them blame me because they're talking about you. Now, that's an extreme, right? And you may say, oh, poetically, this is interesting. But for a person actually to feel this and to be that is absolute submissiveness and surrender to someone that he is not supposed to surrender to that way, except really to Allah Azza wa Jal. قال ولعل هذا هو المقصود بالسؤال الأول الذي وقع عليه الاستفتاء والداء الذي طلب له الدواء. And he says this is probably what had been intended by the question that was first introduced. Now he explicitly says this. This is probably what the questioner wanted a solution for. This is what he wanted, a medicine for that type of ailment. So قيل نعم. He says yes, let's start. So this is officially now the cure part. Although some of what he's going to be talking about, as you will soon see, he talked about before. So it's not really the beginning of the cure, but officially we can say it's the beginning of that section. He says, first of all, remember that the Prophet ﷺ said, ما أنزل الله من داء إلا جعل له دواء علمه من علمه وجهله من جهله. He says, Allah did not send down an illness except that it has a remedy and a medicine, whether people know it or not. And this was mentioned before. So he is saying that if this is true, then this is inclusive of the ailment that we're talking about, the sickness that we're talking about. So if Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, whatever medicine Allah had sent to this earth, there's a cure for it. Now, of course, there's one exception, and that exception is death. The Prophet ﷺ said so. You can't cure death. But any other illness, there's a cure for it. So when you're talking about a physical illness, cancer, let's say, say, is there a cure for cancer? Yes. We may not have it yet, or we may have it and somebody has hidden it, Allah Alam. We may not have it yet, but there is. Any other illness, all illnesses, physical, there's a cure for them. How about the spiritual illnesses? The same. The same. So you should remember this, whether it is you who is suffering, or you know of somebody else who is suffering, you remember that whatever ailment, whatever disease, whatever predicament you have, if it's spiritual, there's a cure for it. So you should never give up. Never think you are beyond hope, beyond repair, beyond salvation, because the Prophet ﷺ said there is medicine. The issue here is that you may not know it yet. You may not have tried it yet. You may not have tried hard enough, long enough, but there is a medicine. And he says, the way that you do it, how you kind of approach an illness, it is either preventative or curative. This is what he mentioned. Either you stop it before it happens, or if it happens, you remedy and you heal the person. And then he gets cured. So you either prevent, and that is the best, or if it happens, you extract the illness from the body. قال وكلاهما يسير على من يسره الله عليه ومتعذر على من لم يعنه الله فإن أزمة الأمور بيديه. You need to highlight this. He says, and both of these things are easy for whom Allah had made this easy for, and difficult if Allah does not assist him, because all matters are in his hands. The affairs of everything are under his control. So he's saying, whether it is stopping an illness before it happens, or curing yourself of an illness if you have it, he says both of them are easy. And this is important in giving everybody hope. He says, why is it easy? If Allah makes it easy. So if Allah makes it easy, it's definitely easy. And by the way, he does not mean when he says easy, it's like poof, you're cured. It's not that. But it's doable. It's possible. It's very likely. It will need effort. There will be some setbacks, right? You'll need to strive. But yasir, if Allah wants it, it happens. If you seek Allah's assistance, it happens. So you have to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Even if you can't see it, you have to imagine it. And then believe in Allah Azza wa Jal, trust in Him, and then follow the path of recovery. You will get there. It's easy, right? And so you have to believe this and to communicate this to others. It is easy if Allah makes it easy. And if not, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible. So he said, everything is under Allah's control, so don't think that this is too big. Even if you have been struggling with something for a long time, even if you have not managed to find the cure so far, just don't think it's beyond reach. Maybe the next dua, maybe the next sadaqah, maybe the next umrah, the next hajj, maybe the next good thing that you do, that's the thing that's going to open the door. So you never give up because the cure is always there. قال فأما الطريق المانع. He says, what is that preventative path first? That's what he's going to be talking about. What is this? What is it composed of? He says two things. One, restraining your glances, and the other one is being strong enough on the inside, for the heart to be strong enough with Allah's love and Allah's fear to resist those temptations. He says if that's the case, that's preventative. Now he's going to be talking about the first part, which is restraining the glances. And that is important. And he did talk about this before, right? He did. But now he's going to detail it even more and mention some of the benefits that are in it. And it's worthy of listening to this and absorbing it, because if you do that, you're more likely to apply it bi'idhnillah. So, preventative, the first part of that preventative is restraining your glances. What are its benefits? He says first, he says that unlawful glance is a poisoned arrow. And if you allow it to go in, it will gonna poison you. Right? So what are the benefits? First, and that's the most important one. It says you are observing and complying with Allah's command. And you will find happiness in the world and in the next when you do so. It's because he said, فليس للعبد في دنياه وآخرته أنفع من امتثال أوامر ربه. He says, there's nothing more beneficial for you in this world and in the next than in following Allah's commands. And whoever is happy in this world and in the next, he's only happy because he's following Allah's command. And whoever is miserable in this world and in the next, he's only miserable because he had neglected Allah's commands. So the first thing is that you are restraining your glances because you're listening to Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is the most important reason for it. Beyond all the other things, which you may know or may not. Yani, you may know the benefits of salah, you may know the benefits of fasting, or maybe you won't. But at least if you know that Allah had commanded you and you do it, you will gain all of those benefits whether you know it or not. Right? So somebody tells you take this multivitamin. You don't know what's in it. You take it, but it has a lot of things in it. Whether you know or not, it's working. Right? Whether you know the composition or not, it's working for you. Whether you know or not the composition of how each part of salah is helping you, how each part of the Quran is helping you, it is helping you. If you know, that's even better. But even if you don't, it's working. Right? Especially if what? If you're paying attention. It's working. So he says what? He says when you obey Allah Azza wa Jal, and you stay away from the haram, you'll be happy. You'll be happy, you'll be content. In the akhirah, obviously. And he says, and in the dunya as well. It can give you a sense of contentment and happiness and joy and satisfaction. Any ibadah. And if not, if you disobey Allah Azza wa Jal or neglect His commands, it'll make you miserable. Make you miserable in the next life. Again, this is very obvious. Punishment. But you will be punished for it in the dunya, with misery in the dunya. with being fearful, with loving people who don't deserve your love, with being hurt, right? With being anxious, with being sad, with being unable to deal with loss or the anticipation of that loss, etc., 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 etc. So just the simple fact of obeying Allah Azza wa Jal brings you closer to happiness, and disobeying Allah brings you closer to sadness. So this is one. He says the second is that it stops that poisonous arrow from entering your heart. Right? And of course, if you think about every glance, every haram glance as a poisonous arrow, the more you look, the more poisoned you are. Right? And the more that this image or that haram will pull you away from Allah Azza wa Jal. So that follows or takes us to the third point. قال إنه يورث القلب أنسا بالله وجمعية عليه. He says, because when you restrain your glances, it brings you closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, where you will find comfort and joy in that proximity, and will give you focus on Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? So uns is when you're close to someone and that gives you joy. Right? Not just simply you're close with joy. So that will bring you closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, and you will find joy in being close to Allah, and you will have greater focus on Him. قال فإن إطلاق البصر. When your glances are unrestrained, it will scatter your heart, distract it, and distance you from Allah Azza wa Jal. And there is nothing greater that brings greater harm to the heart than unrestrained glances, because it will alienate you from Allah, distance you from Allah Azza wa Jal. So the issue here of focus and being close to Allah Azza wa Jal and finding joy in it, again, should be comprehensible to us. Imagine now with me, if you want to focus on anything in life, you try to avoid distractions, right? So let's say you want to finish a project. You don't want to hear about other projects. You don't want to hear about anything else that will take you away from finishing what you have. So you try to what? Restrain what you listen to. Restrain your eyes. Restrain even your energy. Focus on this. So walking or marching or running towards Allah Azza wa Jal has one lane. That is just one lane. If you keep glancing sideways, you'll lose your way. Right? So now, this image that you looked at, let's say, this beautiful woman that you looked at, if you want to concentrate on Allah Azza wa Jal, her image comes into your head. So she pulls you aside. And if you looked at another beautiful woman, and each person listening to this can adjust this to fit what they are attracted to. If you look at another beautiful woman, she pulls you another way. A third one, she pulls you a third way, and so on. So you can't focus. And you need everything in your head and your body to come close to Allah Azza wa Jal, because you are fighting shaitan, you're fighting yourself, you're fighting a lot of people around you. So you don't need those distractions. But if you look at this woman, and then look at this mansion, and look at this car, and look at those people who are rich, and look at those people, all of these things that you're thinking about pull you away from Allah Azza wa Jal. And when you're pulled away from Allah Azza wa Jal, you're not going to find that joy when you try to come back to Him, because you lost contact. So you need kind of to force yourself to sit again close to Him, to read Quran, to make dhikr, until you find that joy again. So he's saying you're going to drift away if you let your glances lead you, rather than you leading your glances. Right? قال الرابعة, he says the fourth one. He says it strengthens the heart, meaning restraining your glances. It strengthens the heart and makes it happy. Similar to the fact that when you unrestrain your glances, you let your eyes loose, and they could look at whatever, it will weaken you and sadden you. Right? So the sadness and happiness is probably easy to understand. Because when you look at everything that people have, you'll discover everything you don't have. And all the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal will diminish in your sight because you're always comparing them to what other people have. So nothing that you have is worthwhile, is good enough. You'll always consider and focus on what is missing, what escaped you, what you couldn't do. That saddens you. Rather than focusing on what you have, and that needs from you what? Focused glances. Focusing on what you have, investing in it, making it better, and asking Allah Azza wa Jalla to bless it. And then you'll be satisfied with it. So when you obey Allah Azza wa Jal, you'll be happier. Simply that Allah Azza wa Jal just will put this in your heart. You'll be happier. You'll have energy. You'll have focus. You'll have a purpose. If you don't, he is saying, rahimahullah, no, you're going to be sad and distracted. You don't know what to do. You don't know where you're going. Because you have very different directions. Because everything that you're looking at pulls you in a different direction. Wants different things, contradictory things from you. And you can't do them both at the same time. Right? You can't be a servant of Allah Azza wa Jal and a servant of the dunya at the same time. They're asking for different things. قال إنه يكسب القلب نورا كما أن إطلاقه يكسبه ظلمة. He says it will enlighten the heart, meaning staying away from the haram and not looking at it. It will fill the heart with light, as is the case that when you don't, your heart will be filled with darkness. So Allah will enlighten your heart when you stay away from the haram, you don't look at it. And He's saying, this is Wallahu A'lam, why Allah Azza wa Jal had mentioned in Surah An-Nur, the ayah about An-Nur after He had commanded the believers to lower their gazes and restrain them. So when Allah Azza wa Jal says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ, say to the believers, command them that they should restrain their glances and protect their privates. He says a couple of ayahs after, Allah Azza wa Jal said, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The likeness of His light is like a niche, and in it is a lamp. A niche is a hole in the wall, and in it is a lamp. So he says, this is the explanation of Ibn alqayyim, the likeness of His light in the heart of His believing servant who had listened to His commands and avoided His prohibitions. Meaning that مَثَلُ نُورِهِ, the example of His light, meaning the light of Allah Azza wa Jal, the light of Iman in the heart of the believer, is as follows. So he's saying, Ibn al-Qayyim, why did this ayah come after the ayah that asks people to lower and restrain their glances? Is because there's a connection between the two. Right? قال وَإِذَا اسْتَنَارَ الْقَلْبُ. He says, if the heart is lit, the delegations of goodness will come to it from every side. As it's the case when if it is dark, the clouds of affliction and evil will come to it from every side. And you will see as much as you want to see of innovations and misguidance and following desire and avoiding guidance and avoiding the causes of happiness and preoccupying yourself with the causes of misery. That's interesting, right? And he says, فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ إِنَّمَا يَكْشِفُهُ لَهُ النُّورُ الَّذِي فِي الْقَلْبِ. He says, because how will you know that these are the causes of happiness or the causes of misery? He says, the only way that you'll be able to find out is the light that you have inside your heart. If you don't have it, you'll be like a blind man in a pitch dark room. In a pitch dark room, how will you find your way? So he's saying, rahimahullah, he says, if the heart is lit, right, everything good will come to it. And you will be able to know that these are the causes of happiness. So you'll grab them. How will you know? Allah told you. So you see it and you're willing to follow it. So you grab it. And you know that these are the causes of misery. Allah told you. So you avoid it. Right? Whereas if not, if you're completely blind as He said, then how will you know right from wrong? And when you find the causes of misery, you will not detect them as causes of misery. And so you will what? Grab onto them. It's interesting. Right? And this is the thing that is making you sad, and people will tell you to stop doing it, and you can't. It's making you miserable. Stay away from that person. No, I can't. I can't live without them. Stay away from that thing. I can't live without it. I can't imagine my life without it. But this is the thing that is making you miserable. If you were to see its effect on you, you'd stop immediately. But you can't see because the heart is dark. And it's completely confused. You think this is helping, but it's destroying. And that is a consequence of a heart that is lost. So he says, how could you find out what is helping and what is not? You need that light inside. How do you bring that light to yourself? He says you have to stay away from the haram. And he's saying restraining your glances does this. Right? قال السادسة, the sixth benefit. He says that it provides, or it will breed an insight or a foresight inside the person that is truthful, by which he'll be able to distinguish between truth and falsehood, and the honest and the liars. This is the firasa. قال وكان شاه بن شجاع الكرماني يقول, شاه بن شجاع الكرماني, he used to say, he says, من عمر ظاهره باتباع السنة. He says, if your outside is preoccupied with following the sunnah. So on the outside, you're constantly following the sunnah. And the inside, دوام المراقبة, you're constantly monitoring your thoughts and your intents and what is right and what is wrong, and purifying your inside. And you restrain your glances so you're not looking at the haram. And you avoid the doubtful matters, and you eat the halal, your insight will seldom be wrong. Right? That firasa. Now that firasa is what? What is he talking about here? That firasa is something that is beyond what you see with your eyes. This is something that you see with your heart. Right? And this, what he's talking about here, is something that is God-given. Because there is a firasa that just people have it by birth. Like they're more insightful than others. Right? They could look at a couple of people and they say they're related. And not just simply because their faces are alike. No, they see more than you and I can see. Right? They're from the same tribe, they can tell. They're not even from the same parents. They're from the same tribe. Big tribe. They're from the same tribe, not from that tribe. There's that instinct that they have in them. Right? So there's this natural one. Okay? That's not what he's talking about. There's one that could be acquired. Yani Shafi'i is famous for traveling to seek the books of firasa. He wanted to learn it. Like to actually read it and learn it. So it will indicate if a person looks like this or a place looks like that, then maybe. So this is acquired. Maybe it can be learned, can be taught. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about something that is given by Allah Azza wa Jal as a result of taqwa. So he's saying here that, as Al-Kirmani, he's saying here, that if a person is trying to follow the sunnah on the outside, on the inside he's trying to purify himself, he's only eating halal, avoiding what is doubtful, and restrains his eyes from looking at the haram, then what will be the consequence? That he will have that insight by which he can tell, no, this is wrong. Others around him may not be able to see it. No, don't go into this business. There's something wrong with it. What's wrong with it? He says, I don't know. I can't tell. I don't have like physical evidence. Something is wrong there. Or something is wrong with that person. I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know evidence. But something is off. Right? And Al-Qayyim explains why Allah Azza wa Jal gives them this. And I have something to add to what he's saying. He says, وَاللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ يَجْزِي الْعَبْدَ عَلَى عَمَلِهِ بِمَا هُوَ مِنْ جِنْسِ عَمَلِهِ. He says Allah Azza wa Jal rewards a person for his deeds, something that is similar to the nature of what he has done. Something of the nature of what he has done. And someone who leaves something for Allah's sake, Allah rewards him from something better, compensates him with something better. So he says, because a person has restrained his glances from looking at the haram, Allah Azza wa Jal compensated him by unleashing his insight, his basira, the insight, or let's call it the sight of his heart. So he unleashes his basira instead of, and compensating him for imprisoning his eyes. Right? So what he's saying is what? He's saying Allah Azza wa Jal, when He compensates you something of similar nature to the thing that you left for Allah's sake. So this person left what for Allah's sake? He says, okay, I'm going to imprison, restrict my eyes. Just by the way, it's not easy today. Right? It's much easier in the past. Today is not easy. Okay? When you have access to everything in this world. So he says, when you imprison your eyes like that, when you restrict your eyes like this, for Allah's sake, Allah compensates you something better than what you have left for His sake. Which is what? He opens up. He frees your basira, your heart, to be able to see what your eyes cannot see. قال ويفتح عليه باب العلم والإيمان والمعرفة, and He opens for him the gates of knowledge and iman, والفراسة الصادقة, and truthful insight that only happens with the sight of the heart. Right? Now, a couple of things before I continue here about firasa. First of all, it doesn't mean that if a person has it that he will be or she will be right all the time. They can't. They're humans, right? But they can be right most of the times, right? In proportion to how close they are to Allah Azza wa Jal. The closer they are, the greater their firasa is, the more accurate their firasa is. But if they're not, it will diminish. That's the first thing. Second, this is an added benefit, but never is the main reason why a person would say, I want to stay away from the haram. You know, a person when he hears this, because this is an attractive thing to think about, that I will have that ability to be able to tell right and wrong, and few other people will have it. I'll be able to see beyond what other people see. So if this becomes your main objective, you're actually missing the entire picture. This is a reward that Allah gives to people who are avoiding the haram for His sake, not for the sake of these types of rewards. They're avoiding that haram to please Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah strengthens them with this type of reward, so that they could see, so that they could feel, so that their iman could increase. But they're not doing it to gain a superpower. Right? They're not doing it to gain a superpower, because if this is the only thing that you want and you obsess over, it could destroy you in a sense of every time you have a thought, every time there's an intuition, every time there's a whisper, you say, oh, this is from Allah. I'm a good person. That's why I'm having this thought. This person is bad, this person is bad, this person is bad. You've not reached that level. You're not at that level, especially if that's what you're after. So say, how do we approach this? Is that you don't think about it. You don't go after it. You don't seek it. Right? You just forget it. And if Allah Azza wa Jal were to give it to you, you'll find out. Just naturally. You'll just have a feeling. Then you'll discover that it was right. Then you'll have another feeling. You'll discover it was right. Then you'll have another feeling. You'll discover it's right. And Allah trains you. Right? So that you will know that you've been given something. And it's not permanent. You could lose it, by the way. But that's the way to approach it. You don't say, I'm going to stay away from haram because I want to get this. Right? قال وضد هذا, the opposite of this is whatever Allah had, how Allah described the sodomites, people who are guilty of the sin of the people of Lut, min al-amah, which is the blindness of that insight, the blindness of the heart, the confusion that results from the heart's inability to see right from wrong, which is the opposite of basira. Allah Azza wa Jal described them by saying, لَعَمْرُكَ إِنَّهُمْ لَفِي سَكْرَتِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. They are in their intoxication, blind or doubtful, in doubt, are unable to exit, intoxicated. قال فَالتَّعَلُّقُ بِالصُّوَرِ يوجب فساد العقل. So he's getting attached to beautiful faces and physiques and bodies. That type of love, that type of obsession and attachment, he says it will lead to the corruption of the mind and the blindness of the basira, right? The insight and the intoxication of the heart. He says, as the poet have said, سكراني سكر هوى وسكر مدامة ومتى إفاقة من به سكران. He says, two types of intoxications. An intoxication of love and an intoxication of alcohol. And how could you be sober if you're twice intoxicated? Right? Here's two types of intoxications, this and that. And if you're double intoxicated, how could you ever be sober? Or as the other person had said, قالوا جننت بمن تهوى فقلت لهم العشق أعظم مما بالمجانين. They've said to him, you've gone mad because of love. He said, love is worse than madness. Right? He says, you've gone mad because of love. He says, love is worse than madness. Al-ishq, he's talking about specifically about al-ishq. He says, you never recover from ishq. But if you are mad, you are seized once in a while. You fall ill once in a while. He's talking about a particular type of madness, right? Where you have seizures or you fall ill, but then you wake up from it. And then you fall ill again, and then you wake up from it. You're normal, and then you're less than normal, and so on. He says, well, they experience periods of normality, but if you are diseased or insane because of love, you never wake up. You're always obsessed, right? So he's talking about that level of intense attachment, and we will have examples. He'll talk about examples of it, right? So he says, if you are attached, meaning if you keep looking at beautiful images, beautiful women, beautiful men, beautiful this, beautiful that, it'll corrupt your head, right? It'll just really like ruin your head. And then also cause lack of insight, and then the heart will be intoxicated. Well, how beautiful she is, how beautiful he is. That's the only thing you can think about. The beautiful lips, the beautiful cheeks, the beautiful hair, the beautiful physique, right? That's the only thing you can think about. And he'll explain how the shaitan will inflame all of this. قال السابعة أنه يورث القلب ثباتا وشجاعة وقوة. He says it also gives the heart stability and bravery and strength. Meaning when you don't look at the haram, it just makes you a stronger person and a stronger believer, and you will be bold. Right? فجمع الله له بين سلطان النصرة والحجة. Allah Azza wa Jal will give you both the strength of Him helping you and the proofs, meaning that physically and non-physically you're strong. Physically in body, you're strong. Allah is supporting you. And also you have knowledge, which also makes you strong. وسلطان القدرة والقوة, similar things. كما في الأثر الذي يخالف هواه يفرق الشيطان من ظله. It says, as it was reported in the tradition, this is not a hadith, he says, the one who opposes his desire, the shaitan will run away from his shadow, from the shadow of that person. Right? Meaning, if a person is strong enough to defeat his desire, the shaitan will be so terrified that even his shadow will terrify him. Right? So kind of the point of it is what? If you are strong in Allah's religion, you're strong against the shaitan. The shaitan will run away from you. As he used to run away from Umar, radiyallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ said so, right? When the shaitan sees you or Umar, he runs away. Right? So if you are strong enough, your shaitan will be afraid of you. Or at least shayateen will be afraid of you. Right? Whereas if you are sinful, obviously not. They'll attack. Because they know you're weak, you're not protected. Allah's not with you. But if you obey Allah Azza wa Jal, He is with you, and you are being protected, so then you are strong. قال وضد هذا, the opposite of this, that strength, you will find it in the one who is following his desire, or whatever he desires. You'll find that his self is humiliated, it is weak, and it is demeaned. And Allah Azza wa Jal has assigned this to anyone who has disobeyed him, meaning with Allah's disobedience, humiliation is absolutely attached, and it follows. كما قال الحسن, as the Hasan have said, and we've encountered this saying before, قال إنهم وإن طقطقت بهم البغال وهملجت بهم البراذين إن ذل المعصية في رقابهم أبى الله إلا أن يذل من عصاه. He says, even if the mules are clicking while they are riding them, and even if their beautiful horses are beautifully and elegantly carrying them, indeed the humiliation of sin is attached to their necks. Allah Azza wa Jal has refused but to humiliate the one who disobeys Him. And we've said before when we mentioned Him, you could translate this today into vehicles, right? And into an entourage that follows the person wherever he is walking, security and friends and whatever he was able to buy with his money. So you think that when they're walking, when they're riding, when they're traveling, when they're flying, you say, wow, right? Incredible, wow, look at what they have. They could buy anything and do everything and buy anyone, almost. But then Hasan al-Basri is saying, don't be fooled by this. This is where that insight comes into play. Because if you just see with your eyes, that's what you'll see, right? Glitter, right? The glamour, the outside. Hasan al-Basri is saying, no, it doesn't matter what they exhibit. On the inside, they're humiliated and they feel that they are small. They feel that they are denigrated, right? And it will show externally sooner or later. You just have to wait. It will show in how they talk. It will show in their consequence, what's going to happen to them, and show in their deeds. You think that they're great, and then they'll behave, and you'll say, what a small person you are. I did not know this about you, right? Something will reveal it. But in themselves, even with all of that show, they in themselves know that there's something empty on the inside, something is missing. He says, this is what you need to see. So you just ask yourself, before being impressed, is this person pleasing to Allah or not? If you say not, he says, should not impress you. Period. That should not impress you. The exterior is simply fake. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He said, Allah Azza wa Jal had made honor and dignity the companion or link to His obedience, and humiliation linked to His disobedience. As Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ وَلِرَسُولِهِ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And to Allah alone belongs the izzah, and to the messenger, and to the believers, meaning exclusive to them. Exclusive to them, to Allah, and then to the messenger and to the believers. And He also said subhanahu wa ta'ala, and do not be weak and do not be sad, and you are the uppermost if you are believers. You are the uppermost if what? If you're believers. And if not, then you're not going to be the uppermost. And he said, rahimahullah, wal iman qawlun wa amalun zahirun wa batin. Al iman is something that you practice on the outside and the inside, to indicate what is not just simply what you do, but also your heart's attachment is part of iman. So when you don't have it to Allah Azza wa Jal and have it in the wrong direction, the iman is suffering, the iman is very weak. And he also said subhanahu wa ta'ala, and maybe we'll stop here, that he also said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, oh Allah Azza wa Jal, there's an ayah, there's a hadith. The ayah is, man kana yuridu al-izzata فَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ جَمِيعًا. If you desire honor, then to Allah alone belongs all honor. إِلَيْهِ يَصْعَدُ الْكَلِمُ الطَّيِّبُ. To Him ascends the good words, and the pious action elevates it. So he's saying that means whoever desires honor, let him desire it or seek it with obeying Allah Azza wa Jal and remembering Him, which includes al-kalim al-tayyib, the good word and the good action. And in Dua al-Qunut, he said subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّهُ لَا يَذِلُّ مَنْ وَالَيْتَ وَلَا يَعِزُّ مَنْ عَادَيْتَ. The one who is your ally, that you have taken as your ally, is never humiliated, and the one who you've taken as your enemy is never exalted. So if you obey Allah Azza wa Jal, you obey Him through His obedience, and you will get nobility and honor in proportion to how much you follow Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is an important point. Right? Yeah, how much nobility do we have today? Think of the ummah altogether. How much nobility, how much power do we have today? That is a measurement of how much we obey Allah Azza wa Jal. So if it is lacking, what is lacking then? Allah's obedience. So if we honor Allah and honor His Prophet and we follow them, Allah will elevate you because it's natural. You will get into that elevator and you'll go up. You'll press at the highest level and it will take you up. But if you abandon that elevator, what happens? You stay in your place and then other people will step on you. Because that's the nature of it. No one is safe. So if you're not going to rise higher, you're going to go lower. So that's what he's saying, rahimahullah. He says, if you want that honor, you will get it. You should seek it through obeying Allah Azza wa Jal. Then Allah Azza wa Jal elevates you. If you disobey Allah Azza wa Jal, you will experience that denigration, that humility. You will be brought down because you opposed Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, so let me stop here so I don't, overwhelm you. Bismillah Azza wa Jal, allow you to ask questions if you should. We have 1, 2, 3. So 3 more benefits, and then we'll talk about the second part, inshallah, which is strengthening the heart. Bismillah Azza wa Jal. Let me know if you have questions. I'll just wait a minute, inshallah, and if you don't have it, we can just conclude, bi'idhnillah. Tafadhal. Yes.
Living in a country like this, where haram is everywhere,
Yeah.
how do you then lower your gaze? How do you try? Everything is out there.
No.
So what should a Muslim do to do their best to lower their gaze?
Jazakallah khair. So the brother is asking, he says, in a place like the one that we are today, where haram is everywhere, how do you lower your gaze and how do you stay away from that haram, especially that it is everywhere? And you mentioned a statement, doing his best. So this is what you want to do. You want to do your best, right? But you want to be true in doing your best, right? You don't go to places where the haram is there and you're saying that I'm doing my best. So generally you know where the haram is. Let's say physically, you know where the haram is. You know where you're going to be tempted, right? Let's say the most. So you circle these places and you'll say, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to go here. And if I have to go to this particular place for something unavoidable, it's directly in, and as soon as I'm done, I'm out. And when I'm going there, I'll avoid the haram. Meaning I'll look down. If something is haram to the left, something in the haram to the right, I'll look the other way. So you know the places where haram is rampant, so you avoid it. You know the times when the haram is rampant, you avoid it, right? Now that's as far as the physical places are concerned. But more so than the physical, I think, is what? The phone, right? Because then you don't have to go anywhere. The phone is right there. And you could look at all the haram in the dunya, as I said, right there in your phone. So here you have to really restrict your exposure to whatever is on your phone. So don't be led by algorithms. Yani don't go to a platform or to a website and say, you show me whatever you decide. Right? Like, I'm so bored, just show me, you select for me what you think is good for me. Right? Because sooner or later, even if what you're watching is what? Good, there has to be something that's going to come that is what? Bad. Guaranteed, right? Guaranteed. And even if you just follow good people, you're going to see an ad that is really not good. So the more time that you spend on these platforms and these apps, especially unguided, unprincipled, right? Without a motive, without a destination, right? You are going to be tempted. So you have to restrict your access to these things. When you go in, know where you're going. what you're seeking, who you're following, how long you are watching, what you're watching. Catch yourself if there's anything bad, and then stop. Right? And review. Right? Review what you have done. This is part of the muraqabah. Review what you've done at the end of the day. He says, why did I go there? And why did I look at this thing? Why instead of looking the other way, I kept looking? Right? Why did that instead of, scrolling, I paused? Instead of swiping, I paused. Why did I pause? And because I paused, I'm now beginning to see more of similar images like that, right? Why did I pause? And is this something healthy for me? And then what is it doing to me? So if you feel that you can't read the Quran, you can't spend your time reading the Quran, you're not close to Allah Azza wa Jal because of what you're looking at, then you understand the cause of that illness. So the way is to do your best, right? Stay away from the haram, stay away from bad company, means staying away from the haram, meaning physical, bad places, times of day, bad people who will motivate looking at bad things, and then your phone or online. And if you do this, maybe that will be sufficient, wallahu a'lam. And if someone has anything else to add, let me know, inshallah. You can add it. It could be helpful, inshallah. Yeah. Alaikum assalam. So somebody, right, let's say they're afflicted, as you say, with looking at these things, and they want to leave, but their effort comes down to making dua only, and they're not taking any practical steps to stay away from. Is that doing their best? It's not doing their best, but at least it's a step. Because sometimes you are so weak, right, and you're so far away that it's hard to take any actual steps. You don't have the energy, you don't have the motivation. You know what's right, you know what you're supposed to do, but you just don't have that motivation. You don't have the company to push you. So if you're in that state, what should you do? Should you just quit and surrender? You say no. But what should I do? You say at least you make dua, because that is considered the first step. And if you make dua and you keep making dua, it's more likely that the next practical step, the ones that you're talking about, are going to follow. That Allah Azza wa Jalla will make it possible. When He sees that in earnest you are actually making dua and you want this. So maybe at this point, at this level, in one sense, that is their best. Because it's just, they're not going to do anything else. Maybe that is their best. But at least they have to continue with their dua and not stop. Because that will show Allah Azza wa Jalla that they are actually honest and dedicated, and it will breed that desire in them. The more you ask, the more you're going to want something. And then it's more likely that you're going to say, okay, if I really want it, Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to guide you, but at least for yourself, you'll say, if I really want it, at least I could stay away from this, or at least from this. Just the first step. Yeah. You want to follow up? So you're saying that if he's making dua, but at the same time he has not restrained his glances, he's continuously being poisoned by what he sees. So if he just does dua and while being poisoned at the same time, does that mean that he's just simply going to keep going down? Or is there a way out of it, right? No, we say there is a way out of it. Because simply dua is just declaring to Allah Azza wa Jal that I want out of this. I can't at this moment. I'm just too weak. I'm too far from you. So if Allah Azza wa Jal sees that from him, He will offer him that opportunity to come closer. Whether it is someone who invites him to the masjid, or it's the beginning of Ramadan, or hears the adhan, or a reminder, whatever it is, but something, a spark. And that will cause him to take one extra step closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. And the struggle will continue, but now he's at a higher level. And then another thing will elevate him to another level, and so on. So dua will do this. So instead of him looking, let's say, or committing the haram daily, it could be weekly. Instead of it being weekly, it's monthly. Yeah, and so on. So it can actually help him attain a greater level of proximity to Allah Azza wa Jal. Yeah, تفضل. Work. No. Sahih. So he's saying, I mean, it's easy to control your phone, but what if it is in a workplace where you are intermixing with female colleagues, and the female colleague could be the one who's giving presentation, or it could be your superior, and she could be young and she could be beautiful, and what could you do? As we said, you have taqwa as much as you can. So no prolonged glances at that lady, especially if you feel yourself attracted to her. So, I mean, if you have to, a quick glance and you look away, right? You don't keep looking at her. You avoid times when you could be alone with her. You don't joke, right? You don't have extended conversations where the formalities are dropped, and you get very familiar, very cozy, very close to her. And then you persist in remembering Allah Azza wa Jal, like astaghfirullah, to keep the mention of Allah Azza wa Jal alive, to keep Him alive in your heart, so that whenever there is the even possibility of temptation, you catch yourself. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, and you keep catching yourself and pulling yourself back. And then also you ask Allah Azza wa Jal, Ya Allah, this is really, especially if it's a source of fitna for you, Ya Allah, this is truly a source of fitna for me. Give me something better than this. Give me something better than this. And maybe Allah Azza wa Jal, will cause you to be transferred, she will be transferred, something will happen. But you do your best, and Allah wants to see that sincerity from you, and that element of earnestness, that you're really honest and you really want it. So you stay away, and you make that dua, and maybe Allah Azza wa Jal will put that distance. And as we said, you fear and you do Allah the best that you can, and you do the best that you can. Allah. You came across, just louder a little bit. Browsers. No. So you're talking about browsers, Jazakallah khair, browsers that you can download that remove ads. So that's a great relief, right? So you don't have to say any of these things. You go in and see what you want to see and then exit. Jazakallah khair for that. Okay. There are a few questions here. If the intoxication is severe for a person, how can those around him help? If the person refuses to see and not wanting to take steps to be granted the basira, how can others beside him help? At least what you can do is make dua for him, right? At least what you can do is continue to make dua for that person that you've said refuses to see or refuses to be helped. And also then maybe you could invite him to some activities or acts of worship that could be of interest to him. Sometimes it's a lecture. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a direct advice. You're doing something and it's wrong, stop it. I don't have to take him to a lecture that talks about this, but a lecture that talks about the love of Allah Azza wa Jal, or the lecture that talks about the life of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, or lecture that talks about struggles in this world and how to overcome them, or that talks about how to overcome grief, whatever it is, but something that appeals to everybody. You take him there and he or she finds interest and comfort in that lecture, and that pulls him in. So it could be an indirect way of da'wah, an indirect reminder. But this is how you can help. Make dua and find other ways that you could come close to them. بإذن الله عز وجل. How should the approach be advised to intoxicated person to make him comprehend where he's just justified with his situation and thinks he is right? How to motivate this person? As I said, you can give advice. You keep telling them, this is haram, this is what's going to do to you. At least be aware of it. This is the way out. This is why you would be happier. This is why the alternative that Allah Azza wa Jal wants from you is so much better for you. If they refuse to listen, at least now they know. But as I said, dua, and then seek the opportunities of a lecture or a Ramadan or a Hajj or a Umrah, something that could enliven Iman in their hearts. Okay, so this is brother just says, acknowledge that you are there to help, support and listen, be patient, kind and empathic. With time, patience, may Allah guide him. Jazakallah khair. Okay, khair. I'm done with these questions here. You guys are okay? طيب سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. الحمد لله.